I'm thrilled to welcome Kevin Huang as our first guest on COO Secrets, my new series interviewing the best COOs in tech. Kevin has an incredible track record, Stanford grad and former McKinsey consultant who joined DoorDash as employee number 9 and its first GM. Over 7 years, he helped scale the business internationally, leading 600 people and billions of dollars in revenue, before becoming COO at the unicorn Choco in Berlin. I had the huge pleasure of placing him as COO at the hypergrowth health tech Void, where he is having a huge impact. He is one of the sharpest, most grounded operators I know, and I am so excited to share his COO secrets with you today. Kevin, amazing to see you. Thank you so much for joining us on the first episode of COO Secrets. How are you doing?
I'm good. Very excited to be here.
Well,
it's been a journey together.
Indeed. And to come into the office today, see all the people and just see how Voy has gone from strength to strength. I am very excited to share this story and your amazing career with our audience. But I'm conscious that I know you well, but our audience might not. So for those that don't know you, do you mind just giving a quick introduction to yourself and share how you became a COO?
Yeah. So I've been at Voy for now 2.5 years as COO, where it's been an incredible journey and super enjoyable. Prior to that, I was at Choco in Berlin. I had a supply chain startup, and then prior to that, I spent 7 years at DoorDash, where a variety of different roles. Was our first city launcher, first GM, ran the U.S. markets, and then focused on the international side. I think when you start your career, you don't really think like, oh, you don't even really know what a COO is, right?
True.
But for me, I was a big team sports person, so I loved playing sports. I played competitively in college, and I think I also loved just like studying, learning, and kind of reading about team sports and just how they came together, how you develop talent. And I do think organizations and business is like, to me, the ultimate team sport, right? So how do organizations come together? How do you compete? And so I'd always find myself gravitating towards that. And I think actually, whether the role of the COO or honestly, I just like the role of any leader is a lot about how you build teams. I think you'd be interested in that. And then the second one is I just kind of love problem solving, right? Just like basic problem solving, right? Whether that's how to improve the customer experience to, I don't know, how do we clean this room, right? And so I found the COO, our roles like the COO often have that. And so to me, those are the two things I've always sought out in my career, right?
Nice.
Teams and be a part of a team, and then just can you get something done? Right?
Yeah.
And it turns out you can build a decent career in that.
And that you have. And it's so interesting. I mean, I also, grew up playing competitive sport, and a lot of the COOs I know also did, and a lot of the best operators I've met. There's definitely some synergy there, and there's a lot. Sport and business really do go hand in hand, and I think there's so many lessons that can be shared between the two. While you were at DoorDash, you worked alongside kind of one of the best COOs in the Bay Area, Christopher Payne. So I'd love to know, like, what did you learn about what it takes to become a world-class COO from him, and how has that sort of impacted the type of COO you are today?
So I mean, like, look, Christopher was like world class, right? Definitely in like the epitome of just like a builder, right? And I think I certainly learned a lot, or a lot of I know today from him. I do think DoorDash actually is just where I first learned to operate, right? So I had come from McKinsey for 2 years, and then I remember my first week at DoorDash, I was in charge of the drivers, right? So that my job was how to in charge of the drivers, and I put together this analysis, right? I looked at the conversion funnel of the drivers, I looked at active efficiency and if we could improve that, and I put together this presentation, and I went over to Tony, the CEO, and I was like, look, Tony, like, we may not need as many drivers if we just do this and this. He's like, he looks at me, he's like, what are you doing? Like, go out and get some drivers, right? I'm like, oh gosh, I literally ran out the office, and I started flyering college campuses, begging on job boards. I was begging my roommates to drive, and basically every morning I'd wake up and like, were there enough drivers on the road? And I think that was like very new for me, right? Like, and it was on me, And I can either, I think, be super, or it's actually both very scary, but then at the same time, it was like very exciting and honestly kind of addictive, right? So that was like my first taste of, I own this thing, right? And it's on me. I think specifically for Christopher, I mean, he taught me a lot. I think certainly like when he first joined, I mean, I was we have an adult in the office, we were working on a little house. But one, I think he taught me like, hey, you can build a business and a huge business on just like 3 basic things: a clear goal, a clear owner, and like a deadline, right? And you can't have just 2 of them, right? Because you have a great goal, a good owner, but no timeline, then nothing's going to get done, right? And you'd always think about, hey, as soon as possible is not like a timeline, right? And so it's amazing how much clarity and momentum you can build by just having those 3 things. And you build billion-dollar businesses on that alone, right? And that kind of operating principle. So that was one. And then I think perhaps another one that sticks out is he was truly world-class at like, how do you attack the short term relentlessly, but build for the long term. Right? So
that's a real skill.
Yeah, I think it's very, very relevant for like fast-growing, hyper-growth companies, because you're constantly having to hit the thing day to day. There's constantly fires, but if you aren't actually like able to zoom out for a second, or even in that fight, know where you're building towards and build something that's going to allow you to hit that next step, and you just won't survive, right?
So
And he would call me on the weekend and have me come down to where he lived, right? And he'd make me walk around. So I was in charge of the restaurants, right? And he'd say like, why isn't that restaurant on DoorDash? And he'd walk over this one. Why isn't that one? And I'd have to give an explanation. And it was and it was never a good explanation, right? And he would constantly do that. If he was on vacation, if he was Maui, this and that, I had to go explain. And so then over time, we built this tracker that actually we could find any restaurant in any zip code at any time and tell you if it was popular or not. And I think the relentless push and he never told us to do that, right? But otherwise we would not have survived.
Yeah.
And so but he also didn't allow us to not go get that restaurant, right? And so I remember the team was like, how are we going to live, right? Like, this is relentless for months. And that took us about 7-8 months to build what we called this like selection intel, right? So where we could scrape everything in the US and figure out, but we had to do those things in parallel. And I think that push has certainly proved very helpful as you're attacking problems. Like, how do you both hit that thing really aggressively and intensely, but also make sure you're building it so you can hit a way bigger goal that's going to come probably just in the next month or 2.
It's great leadership, isn't it? And the clarity piece is so important, isn't it? I think you often have good leaders, and then you have great leaders who can provide that clarity, and both in terms of the shorter term executional stuff, but then the broader strategy that you get people to buy in. And clearly he was very good at empowering you to get out there, solve these problems and run with it. Whilst he's sort of giving you these little nudges there and keeping you honest,
Totally.
Which is so important. He sounds incredible, and everything I've heard and seen from you clearly taken a lot from his leadership. DoorDash is just one of the greatest ever tech companies, and to have had a front row seat to that scaling is such a unique experience. So what were some of the other sort of secrets to DoorDash's success that helped them to become that kind of category leader that it is today?
Look, I think the DoorDash, probably the secret sauce, I mean, it was a group of just like relentless, humble, selfless folks who just kind of loved getting up each morning, like going for the fight, right? And I think, and in that industry, in that like space, you kind of got hit a lot, right? Because the market would change like that, right? If it rained, boom, right? If there's a traffic jam, boom, right? You had to react, and there was not always a clear answer, right? Your answer changed on a Friday during rush hour versus on a Sunday, right? And it was different if it was snowing in New York versus ran, I don't know, in Australia, right? And so it was such fast feedback loops. And I think, and pretty relentless, also like the business model was not easy, right? It was not a high margin business. It was a grinded out business. I think it kind of needed a lot of grinders, right? Who also had the problem solving ability to outbuild. But I think its secret sauce to me was it was able to maintain so much of that culture and of that, like, we're in this fight together for so long, where I think oftentimes we'll die for that will or get diluted, right? And I think it's always good when you have like a culture where someone like walks in, right? And I think Voy has really built a distinct culture as well, and that's part of when I joined how I got excited. But it's always good like when like the first week either a person really loves it or they quit, right? Because you at least know your culture is something, right? And DoorDash certainly had. There are a lot of people who, you had to do deliveries and support their first week, and a lot of people would walk off the job, right? If you were an engineer, if you were a data scientist, if you were an ops manager, right, you had to do that for a week, nothing else, right? And I thought that was embedded that in there.
Yeah, I love that. It's very rare to maintain that culture for so long. And that is clearly a very unique DNA to a lot of the best companies. And clearly you've taken a lot of that into Voy, and I know George is very similar, and we'll come on to talk about that now. Obviously, that's how we first met.
Totally.
One of the biggest privileges of my life, finding Voy's COO and getting to meet you and becoming friends. And you've been here now for over two and a bit years, two and a half years.
2.5 years.
And I know you've had, and you're too humble to admit it, but you've had an incredible impact in this business. But before we kind of come on to talk about your role, what attracted you to Voy in the first place? And what is it about the mission that excites you, particularly as the COO?
Yeah. I like consumer businesses. I like kind of online, offline businesses, right? I actually think it's probably even more today. They're hard businesses, but they're probably more AI proof, right? Right? Like Voy lives in the, both the digital component for sure, but it lives in the real world, right? You are moving things, you are delivering care, whether that's an actual live consultation or that is a treatment plan, right? And so I like online, offline. And so those were kind of like just check the boxes things. I knew I enjoyed those, and I think it was a great culture and humble, team oriented. I was excited. But then also when I dug a little bit deeper, I like the idea of how do you scale high quality care, right? So the clinic around the corner works, right? But as soon as you try to grow it, right, it kind of, and really scale it, it kind of breaks down, either for financial reasons or quality reason it degrades. And I think as I probed more, and look, coming not from healthcare, right? We talked a lot about that, although I came from a family of healthcare, right? Honestly, I spent a lot of time with my wife's a pharmacist. My sister's a doctor. My parents were doctors as well. I was like, why hasn't this been solved? Right?
You were definitely skeptical at the beginning. You're like, I'm the one in the family that doesn't do this stuff.
Exactly, right? Or what is going on? But I think the more you learn about it, I was like, wow, there's so much opportunity here. And then I think it's unique to be in an industry, and now having been here, it's even more furthered my perspective, is that it's unique to be in an industry that is like truly in its like evolution, right? So if 2014 might have been like the Ubers and the Airbnb, their sharing economy world. I don't know, 10 years ago it might have been fintech, right? So you're having your that revolution. I do think consumer health is going through its moment right now, 100%. And I think it's neat to be, that's where you don't know where the companies will end up, but you can actually be part of shaping that future, right? And like probably maybe the biggest industry, which I didn't expect, right? I think people think food's big industry, right? But healthcare, obviously, and when you think about percentage of GDP, is also the biggest. And so I thought the problem sets that come out of scaling high quality care were very interesting. And they have proven to be, and so that's why I enjoy it.
Love that. And then again, it comes back to you just wanting to solve problems. It's a big problem to solve, and it's very very cool from a slightly outside in perspective just to see One, you never quite know, right, when you take on a big new role in a totally different industry. But it's been awesome to see how successful that move has been and all you've gone on to achieve. Every single COO role that we have delivered has been different. It's like one of the sort of, taxes, COO roles, they're going to be different. Can you share a bit about the scope of your specific role at Voy, and particularly how it's evolved from sort of when you joined and now the scale you're at now? How has that sort of evolved over that period of time?
Look, George and I obviously had a bunch of conversations before I kind of really entered the process. And I think certainly there's certain functions that I lead, right? From supply chain to strategy and ops to some go-to-market to actually some product side. But I think I ultimately wanted to just be a partner with him to help build and see through his vision and this team's vision, right? And so that's also what I enjoy doing, right? Like, how do I help take a vision, which I think George has, right? And then help build the steps to get there, right? And that could be doing, playing whatever role that is, but wanting to be impactful and wanting to help push us forward on that side. Yeah. I think so. That was from the beginning. I just wanted to be, hey, George, do you need like a partner, right, to go build together, right? And that's just fun for me, and that's what I was seeking, right? I love that. Then I think what it is, perhaps what maybe when you join, right? Actually, some of the functions, the bigger problems, and everything there's challenges, right? Like, how do you? Man, for me, learning the clinical side of the business is fascinating, right? And how our doctors and our pharmacists work, how you blend that with tech, the tech side is super interesting. But a lot of the problems that are most pressing in the business cut across the functions, right? So how do I, so a lot of startups in the beginning, you're like, okay, this is the marketing team is over here, right? The product team's over here, right? Oh, here's the engineering team, and then here's the commercial team, right? And then you find actually to hit this problem, right, you kind of need all of them, right? And so I did feel that part of my role was helping that happen, right? And finding the problems that cut across, and those typically tend to be the problems that can help you 10x, right, on that side. So that was that, and then to me, I always view the role of a partner and a leader of the company is like, hey, talent. Right. So how do we help develop the existing talent and make sure they're in the right place to succeed? How we operate? How are we recruiting more talent? Right. And then what I would call operating model. Right. So how do we, going back to literally the clear owners, clear goals, clear timelines, the planning. So those are things that I've also I've been working on too.
Nice. I'm going to come back to talent because it's obviously and culture is something that I'm particularly passionate about. But I wanted to touch on what you talked about, some of the challenges. There's obviously lots of things you had to get up to speed with quite quickly. COOs are natural problem solvers. It's the thing that gets you out of bed, solving problems. So what have been some of the gnarliest problems and challenges you've had to overcome?
Well, a lot of gnarly. We've had some busy, You're
going to start sweating now thinking about all the horrible.
So I can't tell you, right? But actually, look, one of the things I always recommend anyone joining is go find something to knock down, right? Any senior person, go for you to join. It may not need to be the biggest or the most complex, but find something to hit. And so I always remember what I would call my first problem. So we're now the largest men's hormones clinic in Europe, right? But 2.5 years ago, we weren't, right? And our men's clinic was kind of not growing, right? And so I went through this, I went through the patient experience, and it's actually it's operation complex. You have 2 blood tests, you then have a live consultation. And so I went to book my live consultation, and it was pretty far away, right? So I was like, and I had to click more days, and I was like, and the next one was 3 weeks away, right? And so then I asked the team, hey, what's our average booking time, right? And we hadn't tracked that yet, right? So we built the dashboard to track it. And I said, oh, it looks like it's 24 days, right? I'm like, well, that's not good, right? Like, how do we bring that down? And I come from the logistics side. I'm the same day. Right? I'm a next 40 minutes, right? Or, and so, man, it was we assembled, right? We
Avengers style.
Right. We had a product manager come in. We had a strategy and ops person come in. We had our clinical lead come in. We worked the problem, right? Better. How do we forecast better? How do we new scheduling tool? How do we improve utilization? How do we recruit and train and develop our doctors? And over, let's call it 2 months, we got that thing down, right? To, if we wanted to, same day or one day, right? And I think that was one, just like awesome, right? I like, there's just nothing to me more rewarding, right? Like we're in that, we're fighting that problem. And for me, I learned the business way better. I learned some of the team members, right? It was really awesome to work with some of the team members on that. And then we also did solve the problem, right? And so I think there are like dozens of those, and you can only do a few, right? From my perspective, and anybody who's operating, you can probably only do a few. But it's good. You never want to waste a fire, right? So this thing was on fire, right? And okay, let's like really go in and attack it. And I think and then we also built stuff. What we built there, we then applied to our weight loss business and our menopause business a little bit. And so
impactful.
That was super helpful.
Love that. That is the perfect advert for why people should join startups. People that love the team, they're coming together, they're solving big problems, having like demonstrable impact. And I also think it's why you're such a great COO. You're not sat in an ivory tower just sort of directing from afar. You're sort of getting into like using the product, seeing the gaps, and then bringing people together to solve it. I think that's just an amazing story for any COOs listening, or aspirational COOs, about what it sometimes takes to really move the dial. Like COOs are, I think, the absolute heartbeat of the company, but they don't always get the credit. They're superheroes that don't get the praise. So how do you assess your impact? And I'd love to hear that might be a great example, but any of the things that you're sort of most proud of delivering since you joined.
We're in a business where you can't always be the customer, right? So I can't always know. You work for Uber, right? It's pretty easy. You just keep using Uber, right? Or you drive, right? And there's two-sided marketplace, but you can identify almost with an intuition, right? Versus I think it's harder for me to identify intuition for like our menopause patient, right? But we're building a consumer experience for that, right? And we have many of those businesses, right? And so one of the things that I was just like calling patients and reading support tickets all the time, right? Because I felt, hey, I don't know if we're close enough to the customer. And I think what was cool to see is also the organization get closer to, right? Oh, everybody had access to Zendesk and was reading stuff, right? And then seeing, oh, these are pain points. So I think that one, because if we do want to build this kind of companion for you in your healthcare journey, we will need to develop that intuition and get closer and closer. I think we're well on our way. Nice. Obviously, I think there's several of those, like, hey, we had to attack a problem, we moved it, etc. I think if I zoom out, perhaps the thing I'm maybe we're most proud of as a company, right, is like we have certainly, like you said, like evolved from this hair loss men's business to 4+ countries, 6+ categories, a healthcare business that's both many different treatment plans, our diagnostics and behavior change business as well. And we that requires a big like evolution of our team. Yeah. Right. And it requires you to work differently, think differently, a lot of stress, right? These times it's pretty cool to like say, oh, we've done that, but it's also like a lot of pain in the day-to-day.
Yeah, and change is hard, right?
Totally.
A lot of people are resistant to it. You've really got to take them on that journey. So that's not an easy thing to do.
Totally. And so what we've done there is probably, and while scaling both the geographic and like the breadth of treatments, I think we've also improved quality, right? So you get way, faster response times, more in-depth care. There's more services for you within even each category that help solve. I think that's rare, where you actually scale faster while getting better in terms of quality.
Totally.
And I think that that is actually what we want to go do.
Yeah, totally,
so I think that we've made good steps in that direction, and I think that's the testament to the team.
100%. Yeah, that's definitely something to be very proud of. Sort of shifting gears slightly, because this whole series is about showcasing the best COOs, but also sort of being honest about the reality of the COO gig. Because there's a lot of people now, I think COOs are getting their day, to show what the impact they have, and it's a very aspirational position. But I really want to make sure that this series gives everyone a true reflection of the harder parts as well, and some of the difficulties overcome. So what have been some of the hardest parts of being a COO for you personally? And what have been some of your biggest learnings from any mistakes you've made along the way? Because I think it's good to not just talk about all the good stuff.
I do think even early, probably before being a COO, I learned, because I made a lot of mistakes, and I quickly had to, because I'm a lead by I'm an enthusiastic, right, an energy person. But then, so I'd always get excited when I hit the number, but then, sad when I didn't, right? And then I quickly realized, well, if I keep doing that, then I'll never actually, my emotion, I can't take it, right? So then I was like, hey, I'm never too high, never too high, never too low. I'm just next day, right? And I do think then you also change mistakes as just part of the journey. And then if you view it that way, and you actually have to seek out mistakes, right? And so that's also where we've worked as a team actually to make sure to unlock that no fear, right? And I need you to make mistakes. If we're not making mistakes, right, we're not on the journey, right? And most of the time, again, obviously there's kind of that the one-way doors, right, are the things we need to double check, but 90% of the day, and your day is made of decisions that are relatively not dangerous, right? And so you just better make them, right? And I think allowing our teams to have that freedom and belief to just screw it. If it doesn't work, go forward, right? And that liberates you a bit.
Definitely.
But from maybe if I think of mistakes, one is you always, as a CEO or as a leader in general, I think you always feel busy, right? But work, everybody can feel busy, right? And work can just fill a room, right? And so I think it's important to always remember what are the one or two things that you can game change. And I think you can always only game change one or two things per quarter. And so, or they have that saying keep the main thing, right? And so sometimes I can forget to keep the main thing, right? And that's always that's a mistake, right? We're going through, as an example, and that's very related to resourcing. We're going through this platform migration in Germany,
right?
And there's a lot of people with a percentage of their time working on it, versus you may want a smaller amount of people with all their time working on it, right? And so I think and have we probably resourced it? Have we thought about the right things? And I think we've paused a little bit, and then we're gonna go forward with this, because to me, that was my mistake in saying, we gotta resource this correctly.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's important to acknowledge that even as COO of your experience, we all make mistakes along the way, but you've created a culture amongst your team and for yourself that these are things to learn from, and you've got to keep pushing it. And I love that, and that's actually very similar to sort of how I try to think of it with our team, is empower the team to go for it and to try things and to not fear reprisals, but instead make sure we're learning from everything we do. And I have a lot of time for that. I guess all of that experience, all the good stuff, all the learnings along the way have helped you become the leader you are. You've clearly had a lot of inspiration along the way from great people. We mentioned Christopher earlier. How would you say your style as a leader has evolved? And I'd also love to get your advice for any aspiring COOs that are listening to this or watching this, about how they can become a more impactful leader as they step into that role.
Got it. Yeah. So I think my let's call it leadership experience has actually had these like kind of little milestones, right? So like my first leadership, I was leading a small team in Los Angeles, right? And that's like my first time I'm just leading team at all, right? And that's where I perhaps just led, actually kind of more from the sports background and my like led by just energy. I'm gonna be enthusiastic. I'm gonna be there for you, right? I'm gonna support the team. Right? I'll do whatever. I'll do any role. Like I'm there for you guys, right? And that was like, oh, that's when we lead. And then when I started leading bigger teams that were geographically dispersed, you can't really scale that, right? You can scale in some ways, but like I couldn't be everywhere, right? So, oh man, this is really tiring, right? I'd fly around. And so then that's where you scaled through like communication, structure, right? Bet and like written communication is very important. You cut people underestimate that today, right? But that's actually going to be seen more than you when you're leading a larger team. And so how do you align that? Then I think there was how do you lead people who are different skill sets and like, for me, frankly, way smarter than me, right? So I remember my first, there's a guy like John Lowe, this analytics data scientist guy. I was like, man, how am I going to teach this guy anything, right? And then here, right, we have amazing doctors, right, and clinicians, and how there's such deep expertise, right? But then that's when you learned, complementary skill sets are important.
So true.
Right? So how do you build a diverse team that plays to everyone's strengths and you put together things, right? And so then maybe my other, more recent, but is, okay, how do you do that across countries, right? So what does bias for action look like in Germany versus Brazil? Turns out actually there is a lot of parallels, right? Or actually bias for action and humility look very similar, but you might have to find it in different places, or you might have to communicate differently to unlock it for them. And for me, that I think was helpful. And and for a long time I had been primarily a SF-based, US-based, right? Like companies, right? And I think it was fascinating for me because you have to become a better like listener, right? And right, Choco was 6 countries, right? How do you understand Germany and France? Here you have Brazil, India, right? Like so there's so much.
There's a lot of cultural nuances there,
right? And so I think that was that was like how your leadership style needs to cater and adapt to that a little bit. So that's how maybe those are more tactical things I've had to do improving for my leadership. I do think I would encourage leaders in general, though, to always make sure you have your style, right? And so I would hope through that, while becoming hopefully a more experienced or and changing and adapting in leadership, you still have your like, man, that's how that person leads, right? You have your distinctive feel, and you want to make an organization feel you, right? And make a team feel you.
Totally.
On that side.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's it. I think it's through osmosis as you go through your career, you tend to take little bits from different leaders and form your own style.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want is somebody just copying somebody else.
Totally.
It needs to be authentic.
Yeah.
People see straight through that. And be kind of unapologetic in that style. And sometimes it's not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. But if it's you, then it's going to bring the best out of you, and hopefully you'll hire and bring the right people around you to achieve your goals.
Like I think optimism and fun are also combined with like this demanding, relentless.
Agreed.
Thing, right? And I hope when I be a part and work with a team, it'd be like, man, this is just a grind, but it's also
fun.
But it's also fun.
Yeah, right? Totally. It's so
yeah,
true.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And yeah, we will come to talk a bit more about hiring in a second, but I do think those things can be the same,
totally.
Right? And actually, we spend so much of our life at work that you need it to be fun. Like it makes a big difference. But you also want it to be meaningful, and often meaningful things are difficult.
Totally.
And so it's worth kind of embracing that. And do you speak to a lot of people who kind of end up resenting their jobs? And sometimes I think it's just that they haven't been able to maybe find the right meaning, or maybe they don't have the right boss. and sometimes they don't get that balance right.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's all about the work, and they're not able to kind of create that, and that's often down to the leader to create the environment. It'd be crazy, given Voice Success, given your partnership with George Palace, the founder, not to talk about that, because such an important part of a COO's role and success is that dynamic with the CEO, with the founder. You know, many people would say it's like a marriage. You spend probably more time together. So do you mind shedding a bit of light on what your working relationship has been like with George, and you know, what's the key to a successful partnership?
Yeah, and we actually, couple to couple, we spend a bunch of time together too.
Oh, see,
right? So it's
that's
like
great.
A marriage.
That's great.
Yeah, look, I think George is demanding, right, and has ambition and vision, right. He gives you the space to make the mistakes, which I appreciate, right, and he has certainly given me the autonomy to go make it happen, but then I got to go make it happen, right. And I think he pushes through both subtle ways, but allows you to do that. That's what I really respect and enjoy. And I think certainly here I feel, oh man, George is constantly pushing, constantly driving. At the same time, I think he does have this familial or family warmth, right? That is there, right? Maybe from that is Greek, right?
I think so.
On that side, and so. I think it's a unique combination, right? And so that part I've really enjoyed, right, and get to know. I would say you also benefit from having complementary skill sets.
Totally.
Right. So George's DNA has come from like a growth marketing angle, right? My ideas may come from like a kind of operations general management structure, and I think that is important for any partnership, team, etc. Hey, you both bring complementary skill sets, but you have a similar values, right? And so I think we do have similar values around humility, around ownership, around loyalty, right? And so I think that's also important, right?
100%.
And I think ends up becoming very effective.
Definitely.
Together.
And you're a great team. Look, I spent a lot of time with George. I'm a huge fan of his, and I know how important this role was, and it took a long time to find you, and his bar was incredibly high, but the great thing about him, he knew that he was always going to empower whoever came into the seat, because he was very self-aware of where his skill set is and the complementary skills needed and experiences needed to take Voy to the next level, and it's been awesome to see the evolution. I remember, and it's maybe if there are any founders that watch this and listen to this, the fact that in the end of your interview process, you went out for dinner as couples, because I think all knew that you sort of were going to be joined at the hip for a long time, and it's really important to get the buy-in from all sides. And I love that. I thought that was such a thoughtful and important step for all sides to kind of do that as a final step. I thought that was great, and I would encourage more founders to do that, and COOs to sort of encourage it. To that sort of stage of a process. I said we'd talk about hiring, and I'd love to do that with you, because sort of increasing talent density and the importance of talent in a company of this scale is just ultimately makes it and breaks it, I think. So it's something you've done very well here. You've hired some great people into the business. So do you mind sharing a bit more about your hiring philosophy, the tactics you use, and ultimately how you assess great talent?
So I do, and look, I think there is both talent. Presumably, I guess this gives you less business, right? But I love to bet on the fast rising internal hire, right? That has maybe not necessarily the full blown experience, but just has the raw, intelligence and horsepower, and then also the mentality, right? When I visited Voy, right, and learned more and more, I was like, man, there's awesome talent. I think George has done an amazing job of building some of these folks who have like this entrepreneurial spirit and ownership, and I love that, right? And it was very contagious, right? I think for me, I just define, hey, what's a great builder, right? To me, they have extreme ownership, they're a structured problem solver, they're humble and like to be part of a team, right? Whether you are 1 year out in your career, whether you are 20 years out in your career, like that has to remain true.
Yeah.
Right.
So true.
And I tend to enjoy the generalists who can work across problems on that side. But so that's one. Then there are times though you need the experienced hire, right? Our medical lead for TRT, right, is a super experienced, really renowned doctor. But I think what is great is he is also like a learner.
Yeah.
Right. And it's been awesome to like, this guy is curious, right? He is just open to learning and rethinking. Hey, yeah, we've done this, but what if we did it this way?
Yeah.
Right. And so if you do hire someone with experience, they must have that one quality to me as well, right?
Never
they are a student,
yeah,
right? They're a learner, right? And so I think we've also done a good job with that in some of our company, right? You need to do that around regulatory compliance or legal, right? You obviously want folks who have had good experience. At the same time, they're still open to learning, right? And changing in different ways. And then how do you find or evaluate for that? I think tips and tricks, like I do think one my interview process is the same almost for like 70% of the folks, right? And there's like a tell me about yourself, a why, there's a structured problem solving, and then there's like a test around like, do you like scrappiness? And then there's questions, right? And I think it's important you have like a rubric so that you can kind of
you pattern match.
Yeah, you pattern match right, a little bit, and you know what a good answer is or not, etc. Versus, and I believe I never do just general experience stuff.
Yeah. The fluffy stuff.
Yeah, right. Because you learn by either even if you're doing a behavioral interview, you can still make that a problem solving thing. All right, how do you? We're in this situation. How do you do this? Right? What do you do next? Right. Versus like, oh, tell me about a time you had a risky, right? Or you confronted risk or something, right? That's that. A little bit of
nice. It works. It's proven, and it also keeps people on their toes. I find when you interview talent, it's sort of they don't know what's coming, and you get to see them at their best in a way, or expose the aspects that maybe you just don't need a person, whether it's problem solving, ability to think on their feet, think creatively, think fast enough for you. I think it's a really good way of doing it.
The counter to that, and I have to be aware of I'm biased, is like I do think it favors certain people.
True.
I can whiteboard on the fly. I can talk on the fly. I'm curious and I'm potentially extroverted. Yeah. Right. So then I know that though, right? And I can understand if certain folks want to work differently, right? And in fact, I love the not that talkative,
the thinker.
Right. Just, man, this person, they are gonna. You can, and there's other things you can tell that they're a killer in, right? And that's all the non-verbal cues, right? Maybe they're not as outgoing or this or that, but man, they are tight, right? They are thinking, they're evaluating, they're pausing. Or this person's a listener, right? I think that is something I've had to gut check over time. Like, oh wait. There's also this segment of folks.
I think it's a really good call out, because you do end up finding people just hiring their likeness all the time, and obviously sometimes that works really effectively. But you in order to create the teams you created that are very successful, you need diversity of thought and experience. So making sure you're sort of not missing out on that talent by being open to those other cues is really important. What are some of the mistakes you find companies, this is not a Void thing specifically, but more broadly, you find organizations you've worked at will make when it comes to trying to hire talent? And maybe on the flip side, the sort of mistakes you see candidates making at interview?
From a company, I think, when you're in a fast growing company like Void, right, you have to hire folks who can, the two areas, right? You either hire a person who can do the job today, but won't be able to do the job tomorrow, or you end up hiring the person who can do the job in 2 years from now, but they say they're willing to do the job today, but they don't actually want to do the job today, right? But those people are actually pretty good at telling you they're willing to do the job today, right?
Very good at selling themselves.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Of course, I want to be the GM of that. Okay, do you realize that it means just doing this trash all day, right? And just like like, oh wait, but I thought I was the GM, right? I thought I was the strategy person. No, this is the strategy, right?
Get out there.
I think I think typically the mistake is actually that one and hiring for senior leaders, right? And then sometimes you're hiring a person because you're just so desperate, and you hire, you could compromise on that. That's a common thing, right? And so, especially as you start to become a better known company, you can almost you can hire too much on either, a resume, but like they're smart, right? And sometimes, like in busy, you don't want too smart of people, right? Like, oh man, this person's an intellectual versus an operator, right? And I think that is I've seen a lot too, right? Well, oh man, look at it, this is so smart, right? I thought this, and wow, man, it's so raw, but like you can't actually get them to do anything, right?
Where's the relentlessness?
And so I think you often have to test. Then if they're already, and you can tell pretty quickly this person's smart, right? So then you have to figure out, are they practical, right? Can they I don't know, can they clean this room, right? And are they like resilient and so what's something in their past that just like gives them the chip on the shoulder or
something to prove,
dirty,
so
right?
true.
And I think there's a lot of looks you can do that, right? You find, that's why sports is an easy one, right? Sometimes military is another one. Immigrants to me are another one, right? Some certain trauma, right? Or looked over a few times, right? For X, Y, and Z reasons, right? Certain schooling backgrounds, and so those are perhaps hints, right? I think,
totally. Love that. There's so much in here that is just gold dust. Thank you, Kevin.
Your point on the candidates' mistakes.
Yes, I would love, if you don't mind sharing, that would be super helpful.
I can see through when you're presenting. Right.
I hate that.
And I don't want you to craft this narrative of what you think I want you to be. Right. And I can even tell it, and I actually penalize more junior candidates because I can feel there's also just a nervousness to it, right? But I can tell when they're trying
to want to
present.
impress.
Oh yeah, and they use big words, right? These big words and super
Chat GPT, just
oh man, right? I'm like, wow, just talk to me normally, right? And so, and then they can't just make it practical and then specific though, right? So I actually think it's an art when you're communicating to be specific, right? And not just crisp, right?
I always talk about crunchy details. It's great. I like storytellers, but you need to get to the crux of the thing quickly.
Totally.
Hit me with the most important things. It's so true. That is great advice, and I think anyone listening to this should take that on board, because it's a very easy thing to do to sort of try and sell the dream on everything, but especially in startups, you want authenticity. You want to see the human and the person behind it.
The things, even the turnoffs for me are, I hate when someone starts off with how many years of experience they have.
Okay.
Right. I'm 15 years of experience. I don't care about that. And then I'm a team leader. I specialize in 15 years of experience in this.
I'm an MBA qualified, 15 years.
I don't even know what that means.
That's so true. Okay, these are good call outs for everyone, just to make sure they keep themselves honest on this stuff. Before we get to our sort of quick wrap up questions, I wanted to ask you about you've been in the US, you've been schooled in the most famous, part of the world when it comes to startups. You then come across to Germany, different culture, and now in the UK. There's often a lot of chat about the difference between the US and the UK tech scenes, talent density, etc., etc. I'd like to ask you, what are the biggest differences, and how do you find like that gap? Is it as broad as people want you to think it is? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think, well, one, I think great talent in the UK and great talent in the US is the same, right? In terms of, hey, here's a great operator and here's a great operator.
Yeah, I agree.
These are the same, right? And honestly, bad talent is the same, right? I think if you just were to say UK and US, the sheer size of the US allows you to tap a larger pool. So there is like, you may actually have to like, it's not as hard to find because there's just like the absolute number is larger. So I think the benefit of Voy and more and more companies is that we are not a UK company, right? We are a global company, right? So you're able to tap more talent in general, right? From the US, but from all the markets we're in, right, and beyond. So I think that's, but yeah, I think it's easier to find maybe because there's by absolute number. I do think, exposure, right? I think is, I care less about experience, but I do appreciate exposure. Meaning, and I think the UK tech scene is increasingly exciting.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of big companies, but I think you've had in the Bay Area, you just had, a bunch, right, from the prior to all those, there was the Facebook. So they've had folks who have seen some scale, and at least, or a person who's just been like observed it in the background, right? Like that's been there, right? But like, and so I do think what's been exciting at our company, right, is just the ambition, right, and the exposure and eagerness to be excellent and great, and you're chasing it, right? And what I appreciate about, what I respect and appreciate about the Valley is you're constantly chasing. You're perpetually dissatisfied, but you are, optimistic. Now sometimes there's a lot wrong, right, with the Bay Area or like the Valley and stuff too. I think that one thing is important quality. And I think we have that in a lot of our team members here,
Agreed.
right?
Agreed.
And so that's also when I was trying to check, right, and makes my and Voy and Joel and Voy. I think practically too, man, I don't love this like notice period and like garden leave or probation stuff, right? So actually, literally, pragmatically, to like to build talent fast.
It's hard.
You hire someone and say, "Oh yeah, I'll be there in like 6 months."
We've had this conversation. It's for any American, this is just a wild concept. A 3-6 month notice period,
and it's a no-win for all parties.
It's a no-win for a headhunter.
No win for a headhunter. So all 4 parties, right? So the company has a person who's like leaving. What value are they gonna have there? They can't start. The employee is stuck in between. Then the company needs it. So it's not built for fast talent growth, right? So I think that's literally an infrastructure impediment to scaling teams, but the actual amount of the actual bar of great talent to me is the same, right?
Appreciate that. Well, we're at an end, Kevin. I've got 3 quick fire final questions for you. In 2026, what skills do COOs need to have in their toolkit?
Range, right? So I think you can, how quickly can you get down to lowest level detail, pile it back up, and how can you do that in multiple areas? Nice. And I think they'll be increasingly important with AI.
True. What do COOs need to stop doing in 2026?
Like, let's call it the classic managing, right?
Micromanaging.
Oh no. Actually, I think they need to be even more micromanaged. Oh, interesting. Right. So like, I think sometimes you do manager. Oh, I should do my one-on-one. I should make sure they're a fly on the wall in their onboarding process, right? And all I know is that the folks who I've either been onboarding for or I've onboarded, man, you make their day, you make their week, and I shouldn't say it, right? Like, miserable. Right? Like, man, grind it, right? Like fast, make them go ship something, do something, right? Execute something. Now, not chaotic, right? But just you push them so hard where it's not sure, it's almost beyond micromanaging. You're just like on them. And then I think they establish that early, and then like, oh, this is the way of working.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. Versus too often
setting the expectations.
Too often, oh, you feel fly on the wall. That's no help at all.
Okay. Interesting. Thanks. And last question: what is the secret to being a great COO?
I would say, I mean, obviously, every COO has their unique style. I do think, can you get something done?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Perhaps like the most valuable skill set in a company is, can this person get something
execution
done? Right. And so that's what I'd say.
Kevin, it's been an absolute joy. I loved it. I knew it would be a lot of fun, but honestly, I couldn't think of a better person to do this.
Appreciate it. Cheers.